As ESG gets discussed by organizations and leadership, a critical question all businesses are grappling today with is how to implement ESG and also how to make it count actually. And this is a significant one because organizations and businesses need to understand how to make it relevant. What should be the criteria? Should business leaders actually be paid on the back of ESG? Now, this is a very interesting topic that often invites diverse and contrarian views. But most would agree that public pressure and changing norms are paving the way for business leaders to be incentivized based on a new set of criteria. This comes to the fore especially with the rising pressure to embrace the concept of doing well by doing good. Towards that, we think one criteria to calibrate executive incentives could be ESG. Let's have a chat on that. So Sam, tell me, what's the journey of Indian companies when it comes to embracing ESG?
Very, very interesting. Over the last 18 months, I would say more than I can imagine the way Indian corporates responded, right? When we started this whole ESG engagement in the market, we thought that the companies would respond and mostly on the reporting and disclosure side. But they actually are starting from purpose, reflecting on why they exist, trying to embrace ESG into their strategy, operations and supply chains. And interestingly, linking it and making the people accountable to ensure that the outcomes are driven, right? So I would say, and we thought that it's not only Indian matured organizations, it's also the unicorns, it's also the MNCs. For example, the strategy is developed somewhere else, but they are now driving this transformation agenda here. So that's how the Indian corporates have been responding, but mostly driven by the boards and CXOs and all. And the other thing is that apart from the shareholders, even the stakeholder ecosystem has completely driving this ESG agenda. Employees, suppliers, government, regulators, vendors, you name it, right? So, but that's what we see. But what's your vantage view there, right? From the HR side of it, right? When you're doing these HR transformations, you see the same echo happening?
It's quite interesting you asked that, Sam, because there were 3-4 things that you mentioned in your interview context just now. One was the whole strategy, the desire, the purpose, and multiple stakeholders coming in. When I look at it applying the lens of workforce transformation, I think it's quite interesting. It has become part of every leadership narrative. So I don't think there is a single leadership meeting where ESG won't get discussed. And the pull is coming from two ends. One major pull is the board. The board is actually pushing the CEO and the CXO real hard to stand up and say, what are you thinking about ESG? Also your new age employees, by the way. So all the stakeholders that you're talking about, I think your new age employees are quite vehemently asking questions about what is the organization's stand. So to that extent, I think that awareness is there. But when it comes to implementing it, embracing it, I yet think there is some journey to cover. And I say that because the big shift that needs to happen in case of environment, social and the whole governance component of a year is to go beyond thinking gender, is to go beyond thinking just diversity or reporting. I think it's a massive cultural shift. And to that extent, I think leaders are struggling. And I'll also tell you where leaders are struggling. Why is that conversation not converting? So the leaders appreciate the need, but leaders have always been very comfortable with embracing goals which are tangible and financial.
And I would dare say short term.
And short term, absolutely. Tangible, financial, short term, which can celebrate in the short term my contribution. ESG requires a very different perspective.
Absolutely.
So while people are appreciating the fact that it has to come out from the direction, the purpose of the organization, I think it is staying over there at that 40,000-50,000 feet and not getting converted. So I think that's what I am seeing right now.
To be fair to the corporates, I would also say that we are in the phase 1 of this transformation which is happening, right? So It's setting the targets, vision is the exercise which is going on now. Now, as soon as you put out a target, like India put out its net zero targeted for 2070, then you have to build capacity internally, educate people, awareness. Second, you have to then put a governance structure in place. Then you slowly embed the incentive plans to ensure that there is an accountability responsibility. So, but do you think it would move in that direction? Is that urgency there, or what are the bottlenecks?
So will it move? The answer is absolutely yes, because this is one thing where we don't have a choice. I think the bottlenecks are few regular ones, right? This is not a shift that I make today and I get to see the result tomorrow, which basically means multiple stakeholders aligning on A, the need, and B, the urgency of making it happen. I think that's one primary challenge for organizations, number one. Number two, having accepted and embraced the fact that it needs to be done, and it needs to be done now, how do you hold everybody across the spine accountable for it?
Correct.
So the whole conversation around CEO and CXO pay to be linked to something like ESG is a very debatable conversation, right? Because, and we do this, we design this for organizations. So CXOs are very, uncomfortable linking to goals which are not completely clear, rightfully so. But also at the same time, something which is far off in nature. And I think this is where the journey for organizations is. So if you ask me the bottlenecks, I think 2 or 3. Number one, how do I build a commitment across multiple stakeholders across the spine? Number two, how do I convert this into tangible? I don't have an option if I don't convert it into tangible, which means for organizations, I will have to transfer and define goals both long term and short term. And it has to become a culture. But the fourth and the most important one, Sam, and I don't have an answer, and I'm hoping you can get me an answer on this one, is the tyranny of benchmark. I think every organization realizes they need to do it. Every organization wants to do it, but then they want to see, aur kisne kiya, who else has done it? And I keep thinking, at the end of the day, you always have the option of being number 2. But it takes different kind of commitment, courage and leadership to actually be the number 1. And I think that to me is the real bottle.
No, I think you mentioned all the 3 things right. And when we engage with clients, we actually pick up all the 3 that you mentioned to give evidences, right? So first is primary evidences. So any number of surveys that we have done for employees establishes this fact that they want to work for fit for future, they want to work for purpose-led organizations, right? So therefore that's very clear. Second, walking the talk. Like you can have a big plan, but unless you make me responsible for the outcomes, why should I be involved? So they're asking for it, right? So that's also there. The third, and very interesting you say that, while financial outcomes were there for us to see, what we've also done is even in the ESG world, it is also outcome driven now. They're saying that suppose you are a very strong ESG led organization, then there is an impact on valuations, brand, reputations, the license to operate in geographies, across customers, price points. We also say that the way you allocate capital is quite different when you look at long-term goals. And even access to sustainable finance, which is what people are ready to put in terms of the transition plan and all. And most importantly, the talent wants to work for you, and therefore the attrition goes down, and cost of hiring, we all know in the last 2 years what has that meant to us. So therefore, be it on primary evidences, be it on outcome based, be it on financial versus non-financial, data is there. So as you rightly said, there is a leap of faith that somebody has to do to jump into this, and we are very clearly advising our clients that should you be the first one to do it, you will actually create value. So
what I'm hearing you say is there are 3 important stakeholders over here. There is the CEO, there are the CXOs, and then there is the rest of my organization.
And the board.
And the board, I think the board is bought in.
Correct.
The CEO, the CXOs and the rest of the organization, their journey of converting outcomes into output by taking a slightly long term duration in mind is the way. So to that extent, should we link CEO and CXO pay to ESG? The answer is yes. And the journey of linking that by putting formidable, measurable goals, which are both short term and long term in nature, could actually be the way to go ahead on that one, isn't it?
Point well made, Chaitali. And I also believe that this conversion of long-term goals into short-term is important. And we have also been advising our clients that you should have a long-term goal, more like a lighthouse, right? 2030, 2035, what you want to do. But since technology and financing and your people capabilities are all over the next 2 to 3 years period, you should have it more short term, right? And you put a plan to it, quarterly measurement, capacity building of your people. As you know, ESG brings in every function of the organization together, right? So I guess that's the way it should be. And we only tell our clients, please have faith, jump into it, link it to your executives and to, I would say, to even every staff, and make it happen.
So, Sam, as a young mother, one of the things that comes to my mind is if we were so hell-bent on knowing what our child will become and only work then, chances of them becoming something would be very bleak. But we go with that fate, because you spoke about fate, right? You go with the fate and you work on annual plans, you work on things about which you don't have clarity.
Yeah.
But that's purposeful, and I think it's pretty much similar to that. ESG is building sustainable organizations, and that requires faith in the true sense. So I really like that part. I'm going to steal that away, by the way.